as far as maybe containing it. I think what this is going to change in that way, as far as like going to meetings, not anymore maybe through like telecommunication type of thing.
I think so. I think a lot of that will remain in place.
Yeah.
So we'll get used to it, you know. And people will go, well, why change? The convenience factor of doing things virtually is overwhelming, you know, absolutely overwhelming. I think sales of comfortable chairs should go up.
Yeah.
And why not? You know, why not do it that way? Of course, many of the jobs that are going to go away, especially in the service sector, they won't come back, I don't think. So, because there'll be this replacement, and everybody will just be used to doing it that way. So the unemployment numbers, and they're predicting like this could hit like 20% unemployment. I do believe that. I do think that's going to be accurate. And I think that number will stay high for a very long time. Because, you know, we're drifting that way anyway. The only way we've kept, 50% of our population employed has been through, you know, gig economy, you know, low paying jobs, crap jobs that really don't add that much to the economy. I mean, all you've done is just basically forced a person to go out and do menial labor that could be done another way, you know, just so they can have the Protestant work ethic of the job. This will help put the Protestant work ethic to bed, I think, absolutely. Because they won't look at their neighbors like they're pieces of shit just because they're not working. They'll just realize, well, your job went away in the crisis and it never came back, and you know, now you're supporting yourself with UBI. Okay, my cousin's doing the same thing.
Oh, I am.
Exactly. Well, you know, it's exactly. That'll already be there.
In the family somehow. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's why, you know, I think it's good that mine's not a UBI. Mine's a little different case.
No, you're getting compensation. Yeah.
But still, it was a way to make my life a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly.
Dr. McGarry helped me a lot. They said make your life a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all. That kind of philosophy is what's going to happen. The 20% be for a while, because the idea of going to a restaurant now is going to seem really, really not just well, it's going to be the virus thing, but also once we get away from it for a while, cooking home will come back to fashionable and everything else, and then going out and everything. I see that kind of decline in that. Especially if we have a second one going on, a second virus go through there, it's going to put even more of that going away. Not that we couldn't have things happen in our house and everything. We can have, you know, but staying at home and
Yeah.
important. That's what when I was younger, I used to watch certain movies and go, why the hell why they stay in their house? And then I didn't get it until I was a little bit older. Like now, even more staying home. But you can still participate, right?
Exactly. There's, you know, it's just not the servant class is the one that's, you know, really going to get hit. There's no doubt about that. So I guess you could view that in terms of social evolution to go, well, good, maybe it's time we don't have a servant class anymore. You know, maybe all that brain power, all that potential can get freed up, and let's see what they can do. You know, let's see they're about. You know, a certain percentage will definitely drink themselves to death and all, but I don't
They
think
do it on top too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're doing that anyway. You know, now they just get to do it uninterrupted. You know, I just don't get a sense that's going to happen. I mean, I get a sense. I mean, I already see the feedback online. People are like, "Oh, wow, this is cool. I get to get stuff done around my house," you know, or, "Wow, I'm getting to spend time with my family." You know, and I thought, wow, not having any kids, I can't really relate, but I can really relate with the parents that they're working all the time. The kids are in school all the time. They hardly see them or get to know them. They'll really get to know their family. My mom said that was the one thing that really came out of World War II was, you know, her mother and her brother and her were together, and they were just incredibly tight. You know, they knew each other in a way that most people, you know, never get to understand. Be a part of. I think that's one of the reasons, you know, my mom was, you know, very, I guess, intense in her relationship with me. You know, was that, you know, she had that depth, and I always felt like the relationship with my mom was very, very deep. Yeah, so, you know, that can add a quality to, you know, our existence here that we might not have otherwise enjoyed, and maybe we'll value that more instead of valuing, you know, constantly buying junk and garbage. So that could be a very good thing. Less money around. Well, do we really need a lot of the shit that we're buying? I mean, pretty clearly we don't. It's a lot of just trying to keep up with the Joneses, or we're overwhelmed with an ad. Oh, I better get this. They say I need it. So.
Do you think Horatio Alger finally laid to rest?
Maybe this will put Horatio Alger to rest. That would be. He'd appreciate it, I'm sure. Yeah, that's a good question. It was interesting in the book. To me, the way the KKK had organized themselves, with the secret handshakes and everything really kept from public view. I'd often wondered about that. I knew there was a secretive organization. I never really understood why. Why they weren't just more. Why weren't they just another party? A political party. Well, it's because everything comes down to weaponry. That they were armed, and that wasn't completely allowed. To do that. Because the open racism, that seemed to be okay with most people. Most whites didn't seem to really have an issue with that. Anyway, it was kind of interesting that, because I've never really seen that referred to. Why is it so secretive? And that's where the sheets came from. Is mentioning in there, the guys' wives were making the starch sheets so they could move around anonymously to terrorize the blacks. Which yeah, still with us today. That was interesting. Years ago, I ran into a guy at my buddy Henry's garage in Pueblo. He ran an outlaw garage kind of like this, attached to a house where he was just fixing people's cars. And there was a guy there, and I was dealing with Henry about something. And he was just like, "Oh, you think you can get this fixed for me, Henry?" And then he's like, yeah, no problem. He's a Mexican guy. He's like, yeah, don't worry, relax, man. Here, smoke a joint, get it done. And so I was just talking to him, and he was just like really nervous, like looking over his shoulder nervous. I was like, "Hey, are you late for something?" He's like, "Oh man, I gotta stay moving. I gotta stay moving." All right, whatever. Sat there drinking a soda or something like that. He's like, "I'm on the run from the KKK." I was just going, what? And he had been on the run from the KKK for a number of years. And he said, "And you have no idea how many people are associated with that." I'm on, I guess there's different cells that are loosely organized, and then that they communicate with each other. And he had done something like grievously wrong. He didn't tell me what, but something really, really grievously wrong. So he never stayed in one place for very long. He was just constantly moving around, and he felt that Pueblo had become too hot for him to be there because he had, run into KKK people. Like you and I wouldn't even know because we're not in that subculture, we're not in that world. But he says when you're in that world, you do start to see how many people are in that, and they're in positions of power and authority. So yeah, Henry's like, it's okay, man, I'll get it fixed. We'll get you on the road. And that car got fixed, and he paid Henry his bill, and I got, I could kind of tell he was, set to live out of that.
Yeah. Well, I think what the EBI is going to help out is people can actually not have to worry about going out in the morning.
Yeah.
Be somewhere.
Yeah.
They can actually stay at home and not feel guilty for sleeping in.
Exactly. And that might have, great social benefit. You're right, people sleeping in, because interrupting sleep schedules is part of the public health burden. Most people don't get the recommended amount of sleep.
They don't.
So they don't. No.
I don't know if it's going to happen. It probably won't, because we're so ingrained, or who knows. This whole thing about drinking coffee, they may have a serious.
I think that'll get knocked down. I agree.
That just kept this country going this time. It's coffee.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, of course, I've read many articles on that the modern world simply could not function without caffeine because, our natural cycles, about 2 in the afternoon, man, I want to take a break. That's what every indigenous non-caffeinated culture does. About 2 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it takes a break. And those places are overwhelmingly healthier, by the way, because it's really what your body wants to do. Your body's designed for 4 to 5 hour bursts of work twice a day. That's what it's good for. That's it. And then the rest of the time, it really needs to recover. Well,
But
kind of
keep doing this all the time with the cup, man.
slamming it, man.
Not just, we're not just talking regular, we got this stuff, they got these drinks now that hold
Oh,
on cap.
energy drinks, yeah.
And we got the double deckers, all the cappuccino and frappe and everything else.
That's right.
You look at the caffeine levels in those things?
Astronomical. Yeah, absolutely. 200 milligrams, stuff like that.
And we're not talking one or two chunks, we're talking a bunch of cups, right? Cups everywhere. I would hope that maybe as a society we kind of come down from that.
I think that would be very healthy. Absolutely. That would be very healthy. Because it's addictive as well. You know, if people don't have it, then, you know, I think it's both physically and psychologically addictive. So yeah, we can get, you know, society off of, you know, one of the major drugs. That right there is going to have a positive health benefit. And, you know, I mean, God, you look at the amount of our economy that's based on illness and disease is tremendous. You know, 40%, somewhere in there. Anything you can do to knock that down, gee, again, that just frees up money, creativity, vitality, frees up a lot of really good things to move into a modern age. So, yeah, maybe this is just one of those transformative events that, you know, we come out of it better. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So,
Well, I was going to tell you one thing, but getting back to the book for a second.
yeah.
I'm interested in writing about blacks and whites, the comparison between money and everything. And
Yeah.
The one guy, businessman, right before he got to the reckoning,
Yeah.
he's not a fan of Manley's at all. Not a fan of that guy at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's setting the characters up that we're going to find more about, I guess, in the reckoning happens. You know, that maybe that's going to be
Yes.
going. Actually,
Yes.
what's the name of the guy? The one guy everybody likes, one black man. that died?
Galloway?
Galloway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Manny took his place. Okay.
Yep.
But there's always contention in the world. They're always thinking one big brotherhood of, you know, black people and blah blah. I'm thinking,
See, he's almost like a white black
oh,
guy.
he is right because
Yeah.
he can use that, right?
Exactly. And he uses that as access. So I think still, I mean, I'm not going to say the guy was pandering towards white culture, but, you know, he used the gifts that he had to try to gain some traction. Because if he didn't have that, would he have been noticed at all by the white community? Because that ultimately is what had to happen. You had to get whites to care about blacks. And the whites that cared about blacks, they cared about the white-looking blacks before they cared about the black-looking blacks. There's a really, really cool documentary called, there's a lot of humor in it as well, as Fear of a Black Hat. And it actually pokes fun at the rap culture of the early 90s. And it totally talks about that. You know, it's like, well, you're a high fist colored nigga. So, you know, you're going to get, you know, more white women than, you know, the really black looking ones. And it has a number of rap artists in it, and it's really, really funny. It's on my check it out list along with Dangerous Roads Liberia.
I finally wrote it down on I texted to myself.
Oh, did you?
If I have
Okay,
it on
good.
there.
All right.
No, but that comparison between money being paid and the lightness of the skin.
Yeah.
Because see, you and I really have, we've been around it, but that's not part of our world.
No. We've been discriminated on other levels, but never based on that.
No.
So.
And it's for someone to say, well, things are better than they used to be. I'm going, I'm not in it. I don't think it is. In some ways it is, right? But
Talk to Denise, okay? Denise just got pulled over. She's been living in this town for 30 years now. She got pulled over in her van over by the brewery by the new cop that didn't know her and hassled. You know, she wasn't doing anything wrong. Just fucking hassled. Why? Because she's a black woman.
last couple of years or recently?
No, this is the last couple months.
Wow.
Yeah, very recently. And then they called it in and they were like, oh, that's just Denise. So she, you know, got a free ride because she's part of our community. But would she have been pulled over and hassled if she'd been a white woman in a van? No fucking way.
Or what, they didn't know her?
Exactly. Or exactly if she was not known, you know, if she had moved outside of her community. So, oh yeah, man, I remember I had a good friend growing up, Walter. He was we just hit it off right away. He was 6'8", tall black guy. And he wore, this is in the 80s, he wore a long earring out of his left ear and drove a VW microbus, you know, and she absolutely loved when she drove around. I had one too at the time. And, you know, he said, well, I'm just the moving target. You know, he's like, I got the bus, I get pulled over because of the bus, and I'm a black guy in the bus, I get pulled over. So, you know, his basic answer was he didn't drive at night. And he said, then, you know, they can do stuff in the dark, and there's nothing I can do to protect myself. So I just drove during daytimes. And I just, you know, that hit me so hard because, you know, when you're a young person, you know, you run around at night and you do stuff and you're with your friends and things like that. And, yeah, pretty much. You had to go to Walter's house if you wanted to see him in the evenings. Same thing dating, you know, he said, oh, I only do daytime dates. So, oh, God. He only dated white women, he didn't like black women. No, so.
Well, years ago, back in '76, a woman and man, kind of black man, but the woman they knew from a community lived in Pennsylvania. She came out here to visit, and my dad was, I don't know what the hell was, but I didn't think anything of it, man. I mean, a black guy in the house, you know. He did laugh at me one time when a pigeon came by and pooped on me, but that was kind of funny.
That happens to everybody.
But, if you don't get it once in your life, you're not gonna.
That's right.
How are you?
Yeah, I've been shit on by a bird. I think the first time it happened to me, I was like 6 years old. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I was just looking at it, and my mom goes, well, that's shit from a bird. And I looked up, and there was a bunch of birds in that tree. And I was like, oh, that's fucked up. I didn't think that was possible.
That probably doesn't happen more often. That's all I think.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Pigeon, you know, the birds are right there. They come out back and forth every year.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing that field in there by Pathfinder Park.
I have seen them, yeah.
That's amazing, and they're all down there.
That is.
When they get up in that big mass, I'm surprised when they go over there. They don't get more out of me.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
But I came out here, and I didn't, you know, that's one of those things. But imagine for I don't know what it's like now, but imagine a period of that kind of thing would be really awkward for a lot of people because you know, of course, one thing when GI brought Asian women over, married them.
Sure.
Here, yeah.
Sure.
Come out and goes on.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to be as much as maybe Asians are looked at differently by white people. It's the black thing that with the white people. That's
And the blacks bringing the Asians over for as wives.
So that pretty much.
That was a big deal. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, they tend to have really attractive children.
They do?
Well, Canal Reeves, that's part of his mix. So, yeah, that was a very big deal. You know, that happening because that was, you know, a bunch of it happened in World War II, and that was sort of seen as like white prerogative, you know. But by Korea, you know, blacks more or less integrated in the military, and they brought back a bunch of them. And then, you know, a lot of the blacks that were stationed in, you know, the Asian bases, you know, they just started bringing back Korean wives and Filipino wives and Japanese wives and stuff like that. I've known a number of couples like that. Oh, they seem to hang in there for the distance too.
It's good to know that. Well,
Yeah.
what about the thing here? Talking about the meaning of jobs that they have and everything. It's always nice to know that someone like Manley
Yes,
come along, run his own newspaper,
exactly, and that someone was willing to sell them a printing press.
and white people actually went advertising.
We're advertising in it, exactly.
So, okay.
Exactly.
But
So,
see, I'm interested in knowing what set off because we know 1898 is coming up.
yeah.
What was that? Well, one guy's going to come back.
Yes.
He's going to come back. But what was what started? We know there's probably tension there, you know, some sort anyway, but not like that. Whatever, you know, coming up ahead. I'm interested in knowing now. When we were in 1870s.
1870s, 1880s, yeah.
So what's going to happen?
My guess is going to be black police officers. That'll be the thing that'll.
You think it'll tip it off?
That'll be one of the things that really tips it off.
Yeah, what did you say in that story? How that thing actually, you know about an event, but you wouldn't know how it got there.
Well, yeah, it's the arc of how it built to that. That's of course it's interesting because that's where the heart of the matter lies. You know, that's the meat of the information. You know, what makes it significant, and that's one thing I loved with you know, Dr. Donahue when I was taking classes up at UCCS was he says, you know, memorizing names, memorizing dates, memorizing places, memorizing battles. He says that's useless. He says that makes no. You don't know any more than you did beforehand. You know, why did we fight? You know, why did we have a conflict? How did we resolve that conflict? And how many of those conflicts are still with us today? That's valuable information, because then you have some sort of a sense of what's coming. See what's coming, and that's true. That's very, very true.
Yeah, what wasn't resolved? Because this whole thing, the same thing in Civil War.
Yeah.
Unresolved issues there that we, it all ended. Like,
Exactly.
well, depends on where you were.
That's right.
You know,
That's
financial conditions, everything
That's
after
right.
the war.
Yeah.
But this whole thing here with the virus, I mean, you see how that's gonna, you know, what's gonna happen there.
Yeah.
If you're in a good place like Florence,
Yeah.
and like, you know, how I'm living and everything, I'm very grateful. Even though I always there's always going to be a chance of an air microbe falling in my nose. It could happen. But the chance of that happening is limited compared to like maybe Los Angeles.
Way limited. Way limited. You know, think about, you know, your average fast food worker. Hell, in Colorado Springs, you know. If I don't go to work, I'm going to lose my apartment. And it was hard for me to even find an apartment. Well, fuck it, I'm just going to go to work, you know. And then what? Everybody that he's working with, or she's working with, feels the same way. So now there's a bunch of tension on top of the poverty to begin with. People are going to seek to release that tension. Well, then what? Oh, fuck it, let's just, you know, let's hang out together and get drunk. Well, what if that person that you're getting drunk with got exposed to someone who's driving through the fast food line getting food? I think that is going to be a major avenue for the transmission of the disease. You know, see, Italy doesn't really have that. You know, they don't have the fast food culture. They had a restaurant culture, and they shut that down really fast. But here we have a big fast food culture. And there's a big difference between delivering food to a person and a person going through a drive-through. Huge difference. You can deliver that food actually with a really good protocol, because you can isolate that kitchen, make sure the kitchen is, you know, non-contaminated. Put that person in a vehicle, that person goes around. You can have protocols like what we're doing with Meals on Wheels, where you don't really have contact. Have all payment be electronic. You're done. You're actually not having to interact with anybody to do so. You know, if I was king shit for the day, that's what I would order. Is you don't allow any sort of, you only allow deliveries, or if someone wants to come pick up the food, you could do that fairly safely as well. But drive-throughs, no. I think that's way too dangerous. And as far as I know, they haven't shut any of that down yet.
You're also surprised by the government not doing that. Fast foods.
I think, well, you know, they're balancing the fear of wrecking the economy even more with, you know, the fear of a healthcare system that's overwhelmed. In my mind, you know, once again, it's just showing how, you know, for the majority of American politicians, the economy is more important than the people that are interacting with it.
What's going to happen possibly is the guys who may be working there, afraid and everything, there could be another peasants' revolt.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We don't want this bullshit, man.
That's right. This is the kind of shit that would do it, because already, you know, you and I know so much of America has been on the edge, and you know, this pushes them over the edge.
Yeah, and you know, they're working there and trying to get that job, and going to get that UBI and all those promises from everybody. Look, we're going to fight this virus, but you got something else on the other side of this whole thing, and that's people being exposed every day. The healthcare workers working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be all kinds of this. Fuck it, man.
Oh yeah. Mark my words. I mean, there's dedicated people. Like, you know, Michael is still going up to work because he's just such a dedicated person. You know, but there's going to be plenty of people that go, no way, because it's already, you know, a super high turnover area because it's so unpleasant. But now it's going to be like unpleasant and, you know, super dangerous.
Especially when they figure out how this could have been prevented. They're warned about it for a long time ahead of weeks, months.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that, you know, the Chinese were the first to, you know, withhold information. You know, it's very clear, which is very typical of, you know, how the Chinese party handles any sort of problems like this. You know, they deny that it happens because it just makes them look bad, and they just try to look good because if they look good, they can continue, you know, basically being self-anointed millionaires and billionaires is what it comes down to. You know, it's just absolutely amazing. You know, I think if people really realized that from 1946 until 1976, when Mao died, China had one millionaire, and that was Mao Zedong. That's how much wealth and power he controlled. One person out of a country at the time, 600-700 million, one person was worth that kind of money. And that's the person that, you know, set the stage and the culture, you know, for China. And there's no regard for the people. You know, there's just, how do you control the people? That's the only regard you have is the level of control. So now of course the Chinese are trying to look like good guys. Oh, we know, we'll help you, and you know, we're going to send this out and that out. Well, they could have helped themselves and stopped it. They know there's going to be a backlash. There will be a backlash.
Not just from us, from the whole world.
From the whole world, there'll be a terrible backlash because the truth of the situation of how it was created, how it was distributed, how they reacted to it, that'll come to light. You know, there'll be all sorts of investigative journalism and 60 Minutes and the whole 9 yards, and the Chinese are not going to come out of this looking good.
You were talking about the meat. They call how they put the meat out.
No, man, just their entire their sanitary practices are horrid. You know, they're not like India bad, but they're pretty bad. India may survive this because they're already exposed to so much crap. You know, this might not take hold. Like, oh, this is a B grade virus compared to the hepatitis.
Oh, thank goodness,
this ain't shit. You know?
I think that country is amazing how they even run.
Oh my God, it's, you know, but oddly enough, I've never heard any analysis of pandemics coming out of India, and I think that may be because the vast majority of Indians don't travel very much. You know, most of them, like I read, like the average person that lives in Delhi, like only leaves maybe once or twice in a lifetime, you know, to go to a festival or something like that. But the Chinese move around a lot, always have. You know, it's been necessary because there's been, you know, poverty or starvation from one part of the country to another. Yeah, and then the practices are abhorrent. That's all there is to it.
Is there any way that Americans are going to stay less traveling?
Well, I think it'll happen, John, because not all the airlines will survive. So the airlines that are left won't have to compete, so the prices will go up. A lot of Americans won't want to travel, I think, after this, because there'll be fear about what they're going to interact with. So, yeah, that's, whether there's a policy in place or not, I think there'll be some sort of a self-correction. What do you think?
I can see policy happening.
I can see policy happening as well. Yeah, absolutely.
And the airlines are going to have to just, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, there used to be a whole lot of companies that made wagons and buggy whips, and they all went under too. You know, it's just the evolution of things. Personally, I mean, again, if I was the king shit for the day, I'd make travel just outrageously expensive. I would just tax the fuck out of it. Like, yeah, you want a plane ticket? There's a, you know, $2,000 surcharge on that. So, I mean, who says you have some inalienable right, you know, to go fly somewhere just to collect miles? People that do that, you know, they just buy tickets just to ride on the airplane just to collect miles so they can get some bonus of some sort. That's insanity to me, absolute insanity.
Take a photograph next to an Easter Island statue.
Yeah, exactly.
A selfie.
Look at me, see, I'm having a great time. You know, no, you don't have any inalienable right to a vacation. You know, you're polluting and you're using up resources and you're endangering the world, you know, by your activities. So.
Can communities be healthy? You think communities can grow healthy?
No, absolutely.
Like this one here, for example?
Well, I think we're in good shape.
I'm talking about something that's communal. We're not talking about health like breathing. I'm talking about each other as far as doing things.
Well, it's an opportunity too, John. You know, we could come out of this a lot better. Whether we will or not, I don't know. You know, I think it's largely dependent on the culture that already exists. which is different. You know, East Coast people take care of each other very differently than West Coast people. Midwest people obviously have a pretty good reputation of taking care of each other. So some places may strengthen, some places I think the burden is going to be overwhelming on them. I just don't see how cities like San Francisco and New York, I think is a little bit better position than like LA is, but yeah, I don't know. I think the ugly stories will come from those places, is my guess. So this may well de-urbanize America, simply because the people that are cut out of the service sector, you know, they gotta live. Where are they gonna live? Let's move back to our old hometown. You know, the houses are almost free, you know, and we got UBI to pay for it. So it might be, that's been recommended for a long time, for a very, very long time, that you take the pressure off the cities. You know, you have all this unused utility all over, you know, America, these small towns that have been emptied out, and this gives them an incentive to head back home. So yeah, like I said, there could be some good stuff that comes out of this. So but I feel for the people. I already know people that, you know, they've lost their jobs, and now they're not exactly sure what to do. All the kids that are out of school, boy, that's an interesting, you know, social situation right there. So, you know, how are they going to hold up with the restrictions? It's going to be really hard on them, because, you know, the importance of socialization, you know, at that time in their lives.
Did you lost socialization when you were that age?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was huge. 15, 16 years old, man, you want to be with your friends. You know, that's where the fun is. So playing D&D and getting drunk and driving around with whoever happened to have a car that actually functioned. You know? So, going to parties, you know, trying to get into bars, you know, trying to buy from liquor stores.
Sure. Fun times for you, huh?
Oh yeah, it was a pretty good time. So, you know, I remember the first time I got served in a bar. That was pretty interesting. I was 17. It was a 21 bar. There were some 18 bars, but it was a 21 bar. I was 17. Went with my buddy Steve, and we were, I don't know, older looking than we were, but still pretty young looking. And we went into a biker bar called Gemini's, which was up on Fillmore and Academy. I'm sorry, Fillmore in Nevada. Long gone. It was sort of a notorious biker bar at the time. And we walked in and we thought, well, let's order Coors Long next. That'll make us sound like we drink, you know, as adults. So we sat down, we ordered a couple of Coors Long necks. You know, the bikers kind of looked at us, the waitress looked at us. We sat there, drank our beers, and we left. They didn't card us or anything like that. You know, that was like the best tasting beer of my life.